All right, let's call the Public Safety Committee meeting to order for December 7th. Or not. All right, let's call the Spokane City Council Public Safety Committee meeting to order for December 7th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from November 2nd?
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, the minutes are approved. And I am taking over for Councilmember Kinnear today, who's feeling a little under the weather. And Councilmember Cathcart, who's vice chair, is enjoying the weather in Mexico, I believe. So you're stuck with me. I haven't heard anything on the consent agenda that anyone wanted to take up, but especially since I'm not the normal chair, is there anything on the consent
Council
agenda?
President,
Yes.
I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but you're really low on the volume.
Okay, I'll speak up. Is that better? All right, so on consent agenda, I haven't heard any requests to take any of those off, but again, you wouldn't have known to ask me that. So not seeing anything. Let's move to strategic planning session, and the one strategic priority is an integrated response. And I believe Arian and perhaps others are here to give us an update on the Mental Health Crisis Stabilization Center.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Arian Schmidt with Dan Sigler from Pioneer Human Services. Just shared a screen. Is everyone able to see that? Wonderful. So we're just here to give you a progress update on the Mental Health Crisis Stabilization Facility. Many of you have been on this journey with us for a long time, and it's really exciting to share with you that we're actually turning dirt. So I'm going to go over just a few things related to where things are at over on the county campus. A little bit of review about what this facility is going to do, and then Dan is available as the provider that's working on the programmatic aspect so that we are ready to roll come 2021. As a reminder, this site will be at the corner of Gardner and Cedars, basically just kitty corner from the county facility shop, and in near enough proximity for individuals to be close to the jail, but far enough that it really feels like the true diversion opportunity that it is. To review, this is the blueprint of the facility where law enforcement officers will bring eligible individuals into a Sally port. Up here, they will go through medical clearance to make sure there's no underlying issues going on that would need a higher level of care than this facility could bring. Then they will go either into the Mental Health Crisis Stabilization Unit, withdrawal management and detoxification units, or a combination of both. At the end of the crisis standpoint, when they are ready either to move on to other case-managed treatment or need a few days of holdover because case-managed treatment is not available, we also have the area over here, the intensive inpatient beds that we formerly were calling divergent holdover beds. As we get further along in the process, presentation, if you've got questions about that, Dan Ziegler from Pioneer can definitely assist. Once again, as a reminder, our facility does take some of the really accomplishments of models in other areas of the state and combines them into one site so that we're not transporting people to their treatment. They can have it right there at the facility. This is one of the renderings of what the building will look when it's finished. We are using an open floor plan, which is proved in other facilities to be very positive for individuals who are trying to get over crisis, as well as assisting the operator to ensure that they have direct supervision. To recap our timeline, we began construction this fall. Construction, I'm excited to tell you, is on or a little ahead of schedule and will continue through the winter, along with Pioneer continuing the programmatic readiness. And then in the spring, we will do our final site readiness and open the facilities. Our goal is to get at least 1 month of operation in before the end of June in order to take advantage of a Washington State proviso that is specifically for this, and that will allow us to do so by opening in that spring timeline. So here is the dirt that has been turned. So they actually have been putting in utilities, infrastructure, into motor pool. The beautiful thing, it was just basically a shell of the building. Really did not run into any surprises, and we're getting far enough along in the construction that we're pretty much clear of the change order gotchas, and we're well within the contingency that was built into the project. You can see down below major enhancements to the HVAC system that will be going in, and they are actually pouring the replacement cement as we speak. We're really wanting to maintain the historic nature of the facade, but definitely upgrading it so that all aspects of the building meet behavioral health code as required by Department of Health, who will be licensing the site, as well as doing energy efficient and also structurally required aspects to the roof and things like that. Nothing really shiny yet to show on the construction side, but it is really exciting to see that the construction company, which is Baker, is really taking our aggressive timeline to heart and getting us far enough along so that they can be pretty much done with exterior and work on the interior during the winter months. Just as a reminder, we're really wanting to impact not only folks' lives, but the criminal justice system in two ways. One is in booking and intake to allow for pre-booking diversion, and then later on down, obviously reducing average daily population in the jail itself because those folks are never booked and classified. So those are just some reminders of what we set this up for. This is once again a comparative of the Snohomish pilot that is now in its second season. And I'll probably turn it over to Dan now to talk about this and the programmatic things that they're continuing to work on with the Healthcare Authority, managed care organizations, and communication plan with our public.
Great, thanks. And thank you, it's good to be here to get the opportunity to share with you today. This slide is it's looking at our program in Snohomish, and it was an evaluation by Department of Social and Health Services in our first year. And what it shows here is, the program accomplished really what you would hope it would accomplish. The number of days that people spent in jail. Kind of an echo thing. Is anyone else hearing that? Oh, okay, I think it's gone. And so, reducing number of people that went to jail, reducing the average time that people would stay in jail, reduce the number of needs for psychiatric stays, and then it increased in all the areas you would want it to increase, where people were able to substantially more people getting connected to substance use and mental health services, and being able to get housed who were homeless before. So we had really good success there, but when we designed this program, it really took elements of this as well as a number of other programs. So I think that we'll see even better outcomes, I guess is what I wanted to say in this program, just because of the mix of services that we'll have there. So excited for that piece of it. We're also working now with the Department of Health, getting, working through all the licensure pieces, and that's coming along smoothly, as well as kind of getting things in place with the managed care organizations and others who will be other funding partners for this program. So similar to the construction, we're on a very dual paths, and both ends seem to be going well, and no major red flags to speak of at the moment. So we're very excited, super excited for this project to come online and for the impact that it's going to have. So we've also, in the last number of months, so much has been focused on just trying to get the construction pieces and requirements around that in place. But that was really where, previously a lot of the focus was. But now that that's in place and construction's going, now we're at the place where we can really take the next, 7 months to really engage the community and be getting feedback and connecting with all the right advisory groups to ensure that, the program just has, plenty of input from impacted communities and the we ourselves are asking all the right questions to ensure that our service delivery truly meets the need. So that's really much of what we'll be doing over these next number of months, and I've already started. I've already had a number of meetings with different community groups, and so that will continue on. We've also had quite a bit of support from the health systems, Providence and MultiCare, in the design of the facility as well, understanding what they've seen, and also being able to get some of their experts who also help provide consult on it. And I think that is most of what I have. Arian, did I miss anything that I should address?
What's the projected opening date?
I think we're hoping to open in June. Arian, do you have something you want to say?
Oh no, you were right on. I was having a hard time unmuting myself.
Okay. All right.
So that's really all we had. We're going to be working on the M&O construct as we get closer and closer, and obviously be working with Scott and Tanya on that, as well as our key partners, wanting to minimize it all possible any delta after we go through the Medicaid reimbursement, other external revenue sources, to really make a difference on any sort of impact locally as we divert these folks from the jail. So that's really, we just wanted to touch base with you guys before the end of the year. Any other questions?
Yep. Any questions from council members? I can't see all of you, so just go ahead and volunteer if you have any. All right. I'm not hearing. Appreciate it. It's starting to get pretty exciting, actually. We're somehow, it feels like we're closer to having it open than we weren't, and that makes me very excited. So thanks for all your work, and special thanks to Pioneer. I remember, Tim, I think it was almost 5 years ago that we were sitting down and talking about the possibility of this and what we might be able to do. So I super appreciate you and your team helping us move forward. Even before, you weren't committed or anything. You were just brainstorming with us. Thanks.
It's very exciting.
Yep. Okay, then let's go down to staff requests. And the first is we have, looks like Carly Courtwright and Mary Muramatsu on our long-awaited proposed changes on special events. You guys have been very diligent and trying to herd the cats on this and keep us moving forward. It looks like we're getting closer. So tell us what's going on.
Great. Thank you, Council President. So we finally have a proposed ordinance that we would like to bring to you at the beginning of the year. So everyone will bear with me. I'm going to share my screen and I think kind of go through it to explain the changes that we're making. We do have the section on cost recovery that we agreed to at the Finance Committee back in February, if we can believe that, pre-COVID. And so we haven't really been doing much on it since then. We had the opportunity as we were getting this ready. I partnered with Mary to go ahead and make some other cleanup changes to the ordinance based on some of the changes that we've recently made regarding the park rules. And we just thought that it was a really great opportunity if we were going to go in there to do it all at once. So I'm not planning to go through, very much line item by line item. I just kind of wanted to point out some of the cleanup that we're doing in order to make this, like I said, more streamlined with the business practices that we're already doing and make it a little bit more interpretable to general citizens. So for example, we're striking out parades and demonstrations because special events is defined below and we didn't want to have it just be limited to parades and demonstrations. So we took that out. Same thing with applicant. We've just cleaned up the wording on this to make it a little bit more user-friendly. We reordered, for some of you who may recall, back in about 2014 is the last time we updated this ordinance, and we added the beer garden provision regarding having beer gardens in the right-of-way. That was previously the last letter being added, so we went ahead and just renumbered everything so it was in alphabetical order to be consistent. So that's all that change is there. I think, again, we added a little bit more of clarification on expressive activity. And feel free, if anybody has any questions anytime, to speak up and let me know. So a big change that I kind of want to point out that's, again, just to be a little bit more consistent with what we've been doing, we have added the clarification of what issuing authority means. Previously, underneath this ordinance, we tended to treat it more for events on the right-of-way, and that was a Class 3 license as signed off by the Chief of Police or his designee. But we also have special events in the park, which are issued by the Parks Director. And so we treat them all as a special event process and how we treat them. And so it just made sense to kind of realign this and create the issuing authority. So therefore, the intent is still the same. We're not making any difference. The Chief of Police or his designee will still be issuing permits that impact the right-of-way, whereas the Parks Director will be signing off for special events in the park. This just creates some clarity on what that means to be consistent with practice. And again,
Carly?
some clarification. Yeah,
Carly?
go ahead.
Just to be clear, as far as the public is concerned, though, is there still just one portal so they don't have to decide which one they are?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Great. That is a
Good
huge,
question.
huge improvement. Thank
Yeah.
you.
We are, again, some little clarification here on non-commercial special event and what that means. And again, just some cleaning up here of aligning these better so they are more not redundant, so to speak. So I think that's all that's really on that section. On this one, we added this clarification language regarding responsibility for cleanup, and this really stems from the work that's been going on regarding the park rules and making that really clear that when you are having a special event, you are responsible for the cleanup. That has been sort of practice, but we have codified that better now within this proposed change. So that's the change that we've added there. And again, this section here is where we...
Carly?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Karen. So what happens if somebody uses the park, gets a permit, does everything they're supposed to do, they use the park, they leave a mess, they don't clean it up? Can we go back and clean up? Is that how this is going to work?
That's
Okay.
the intent, is that we would be able to do that now by doing that.
Okay.
So we could send them a bill, or, what we have tended to done in the past is you don't get another special event permit. Usually, there's a lot of coordination with special events, and so if park staff comes in after the fact and just cleans it up and doesn't keep track of their time, it may be difficult to bill. If they're prepared to do that, then we can. This gives us the mechanism to do so. If they have cleaned it up, they can just sort of report. We had an incident this year, for example, during one of our protests where we weren't issuing permits per se, but we were letting people freedom of expression in the park. And they were expressly told not to bring in their vehicles, and they did. And so we basically let them know this jeopardizes you from the ability to have any permit in the future because we gave you a clear direction and you chose to ignore it. So that's what we usually do. But yes, it does give us the option. Good question. And like I said, this part here is where we struck out just the nature of making it a Class 3 license and just changing that to the issuing authority. So that's just doesn't change anything of what we're doing. And to answer the Council President's question, it's still the same process. You submit one application. We all work together to approve it. We have that better coordination. It's just clarified better now that the issuing authority is either the Parks or the Police Department. For the time for filing, we just cleaned this up a little bit to be a little bit more, I guess I wouldn't say lax, but consistent with practice. We still really encourage events to submit their application no later than 30 days ahead of time, preferably 90. But we have, for applications that are expressive events that maybe have a shorter time frame. We ran into this a couple of years ago when Gonzaga was going to be in the Final Four and, getting prepared for possibly doing a victory parade should they win the championship game. That was less than even 7 days. And so trying to work with events so we don't have to be so hard on it to say no, but just really give us the option to say no if we have to because we didn't have enough time to plan. So that's just some change we've made here, again, to be consistent with practice and what we've been doing. And then not a lot of change to this section. Again, conditions affecting the special event permit process, just changing that language to be consistent. With the denial of the permit, this was previously we have a denial, and then if it was being denied, they would have the ability to appeal. That appeal process has now been added, and I'll discuss that a little bit further below. And then again, the revocation here, we just changed it from licensing officer to issuing authority to be consistent. So, and we've, rarely use this, but if there is the possibility that an event has gotten out of control, we have the ability to revoke their permit. Again, just some language cleanup to be consistent. And then, so here is the appeal or denial of a revocation. Previously, it was, as you can see here, referred to SMC 4.04100, and that was in regards to the Class 3 license. And as some of you may remember, for a few years ago, when about the only time any of us can remember having this is an appeal by Elkfest for requiring that they have police officers providing crowd control. They were denied their permit because they didn't agree to those terms, and so they sought to the city council to have a hearing, and that was assigned to the hearing examiner. So rather than make that process more complicated than it needs to be, we just went ahead and added that now with sort of the change, so it will immediately go to the hearing examiner. So in general, we felt that that was probably going to be what city council would do anyway, was to refer it to the hearing examiner. The hearing examiner has reviewed this and has agreed to this. And so this sort of just streamlined that and does provide the opportunity to move this along pretty quickly so we can have that review as needed. The other language that we've included in here now was what we talked about back in February, again, through our long process of trying to come up with a more equitable cost recovery. We still have a ways to go on this, but I think this is a step in the right direction. As we discussed at that time, we're recommending changing the licensing or the application fee to a tiered schedule based on size of event. And basically what this ends up doing, based on our analysis that we did on staff time that's involved in reviewing an application and that coordination, the application fee ends up being about 10% of the staff time being involved in that. And that's how we came up with that cost recovery. Obviously, very large events such as Hoop Fest and Bloomsday take up a lot more staff time than a small event such as a block party. And so that's why we made that change there. We've also made some clarification on what the cost recovery is for, and that's in regards to traffic or crowd control. This has fire department response, other street support, that type of thing is included in this. The cost recovery structure that we agreed to was to come up with, so everyone at least had to pay something. As everyone probably recalls, we used to have a situation where most of our parade-like events didn't pay for anything. Our big events, Bloomsday, Hoop Fest, and Pig Out, paid for 60%, and all other events paid 100% of their costs. This new tiered structure kind of, again, makes sure that everybody pays something while still understanding that parades are free community events and they don't necessarily have the revenue source that another event such as, say, the Spokane Marathon, which is charging an entry fee, does, or Hoop Fest. Hoop Fest, Bloomsday, and Pig Out all have economic impact statements that they've provided that show the economic impact that they bring in, which is why we have proposed this cost structure. The other thing that we included in here was to phase in the parade costs, knowing that they need time to plan for this, obviously being impacted by COVID as well. So we're saying that it will still be 0% in 2021, as that still remains to be seen if we're going to be able to have those type of events. And then they would do 12.5% in 2022, and then do the full 25% in 2023. We also included specific language in here regarding park reservation fees, and that has to do with, again, depending on what you're doing in the park, if it's at Riverfront Park as a different park, there are various fees that may be assessed. So that's independent from what we have codified in the ordinance, but we do want to make sure that that was indicated people that they would have to pay. One thing that I would like to point out on this is Tanya Wallace, the CFO, did review, and she had some thoughts on coming up with a more structured fee schedule for cost recovery, which I think all of us who've been involved in this project are in agreement with. It's something that we still want to continue working on as a group. It's just, this is sort of a good stepping stone as a way to get a little bit more cost recovery in. Currently, underneath this model, we bring in about 8% more than we usually do. So we're still subsidizing special events by about 50%, a little bit more than that, actually. It's closer to about 44%. But it gets us a little bit closer to recouping more of those costs. And I think, again, it's something that we continue to work on as a group and coming up with more standard routes that would be able to provide a stronger estimate ahead of time of how many officers would be involved and better fee structures associated with that. Same thing in alignment with the park system on being able to sort of have a menu of options that they could pick from. We'd likely have that fee structure be independent from the ordinance, and we would just reference it from the ordinance. So at some point, we'd like to come back with that fee structure, but for right now, this is our proposal.
Is
And I think
Carly,
that is, go ahead.
is
Yes.
Lilac Parade in the parade version, the 25%?
Correct. Lilac would be under 25%.
Okay, great. Thanks. Any questions or concerns from anyone? Again, can't see everyone, so volunteer if you have one. All right. Well, Carly, I really appreciate your walking through it step by step. Made it very clear, and I appreciate all your team's work on this. And hopefully we'll have a great opportunity in 2021 to start utilizing this. So.
And I just also, this is Candace, I want to echo all the work. I know we've been working on this probably for 4 to 5 years, and it was really difficult because we were kind of looking at it one at a time, and it makes a lot of sense to just have a uniform approach, and I also like the phased-in approach. The nonprofits have been hit so hard with the pandemic. Perhaps, we may want to revisit something potentially this summer as a waiver or something to get them back on their feet. So I just want to put that out there.
Great point, council member. There is still a provision in there on that cost recovery that it still can be waived by the mayor or city council. So there's still that option if we wanted to do something that we could. So there is that.
All right, great. And next I wanted to get a report we've been getting every month from Sergeant Spearing and his K-9 unit. Sergeant Spearing, if you're there, can tell us about the latest numbers.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. So for November, we had 94 deployments. We deployed the dogs 94 times, resulting in 34 captures. And yes, we did have 1 contact during the month of November. So November's overall contact stat is 2.94%. That brings our year total to 2.55%, a year total of 9 contacts, 1,121 deployments, 352 people captured so far. The training, we spent 35% of our training time in apprehension. We had 135 training events for the dogs this last month. Apprehension, building, search, and tracking were the top 3. I go through all the deployments as I do every single month, and one of the things I do is I make sure the captures really are captures, so we're not cheating stats in any sort of way. One of the deployments that stood out to me, and I just want to share real quick with you before I go. Officer Buckman and his K-9 partner Trace went to assist the PAC team serving a search warrant for a felony suspect. He noticed that there was somebody else inside the house. Nobody would respond to come out of the house to exit once the warrant was written and multiple announcements were given. So rather than sending a dog, which isn't a possibility, and lacking any other threat information, he held Trace on a short leash. So it's a traffic lead. It's a 3-foot leash behind the search team. Went in, and the search team was able to locate the suspect closed in a closet. And that's when Trace was moved to the side of the team, barked, made announcements, and the suspect showed their hands and came out and was taken into custody with no use of force whatsoever. I see that as a great example of utilizing the dog should things go sideways or that person be located in a spot where law enforcement can't get to them, but maintaining control of the dog the whole time and using them for what they're really good for, which is their nose.
Yeah.
And next month, unless there's any questions, plan on being back next month.
All right. Any questions? I just want to appreciate your highlighting that excellent use, and also it seems like the numbers of bites have gone down since you've taken over, and we really appreciate your looking so closely and keeping people aligned with policies and as you update the policies. So great work. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
Yep. Next up, I have Michelle Hughes on the audit exit interview report. So Michelle, if you're there.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. We have Alicia Shaw and Tara Alfano on the meeting here to go ahead and do the exit interview presentation of this year's audit. So Tara, take it away.
All right. Let me start sharing my screen here. Okay. All right. Can everyone see that? All right?
Okay, so everybody can see the presentation? Okay, good. Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity today to share the results of the city's financial statement and federal grant compliance audit for 2019. My name is Alicia Shaw, audit manager for Team Pullman, and then joining me today is Tara Alfano, who's an assistant audit manager and was also the in-charge auditor for this audit. We really value and appreciate the city's participation in this meeting, so please let us know if you have any questions as we're proceeding through this presentation. Just so you know, the presentation that you're seeing, the PowerPoint presentation, is really going to include an overall summary of the high-level results from the city's audit this year. We actually provided the city with a supplement to this presentation that does include copies of the draft audit reports and the exit conference document. We will reference sections where you can see the information that we're discussing in more detail, but we do not plan to speak from that packet today. We're simply going to provide the presentation from this high-level summary. One thing we wanted to point out in this presentation is to discuss why do audits matter. You know, Pat McCarthy is the state auditor for the Washington State Auditor's Office, and our office has an emphasis on building trust. So increase trust in government. You know, audits build that trust and they let the city and others know if things are operating effectively and what improvements have been made to resolve any past issues that the city may have. Independent audits, they're performed by experienced government auditors, and we perform about 2,700 state and local government audits each year. Those audits increase transparency and reliability because the results are made available to the public. So the public's going to know what was reported to the city for the year and how the city is operating. Recommendations that we make, they're designed to help the city improve operations and efficiencies. They also let the city know areas where there could be improvements made to more comply with the policies and procedures and state laws and regulations. You know, our goal today is to make sure you understand the results of our audit and then answer any questions that you may have. So with that, I'll turn the presentation of the draft audit reports over to Tara.
Great, thank you. Okay, so like Alicia said, we have your draft audit reports and your audit results for the financial statement and your federal grant audit. And we did provide our big packet with your draft reports to council. I believe Michelle was going to hand those out. So if you guys want to follow along, I will point out some page numbers. And then we put some highlights in those reports too as well that kind of highlight the most important pieces. So on the screen, you'll see we're starting with our financial audit results. So we did have an unmodified opinion this year, which is a good, clean audit for your financial statements. A couple of things to point out with that is we have the opinion is issued in accordance with GAAP requirements, and then our audit is conducted in accordance to government auditing standards. The second piece on the screen is the internal control and compliance over financial reporting. So again, really good audit results. We had no significant deficiency in internal controls, and then we identified no deficiencies that we would consider a material weakness. And we had no instances of noncompliance that were material to the financial statements of the city. So then some further financial audit results, some required communications that we do for each audit. So we had one uncorrected misstatement that we provided for review for the city, and that's actually on page 2. It's detailed a little bit more in detail there, but really it was, we determined it was an immaterial misstatement, and that's why it's left uncorrected. So that was for some water sewer charges for services revenue, but again, it was determined to be immaterial to the fair presentation of your statements. We also wanted to point out that we had no material misstatements identified this year, so that's really quite an impressive result for the city. And then the next piece down, we have your CAFR letter that we provide. So this gets attached to your CAFR that you publish as well. And that letter will be dated for today's date, just stating that we did review the CAFR and it gives our audit results that you can add in there. On to the next page. So this year we had a couple areas of emphasis for the audit report. You did implement a new GASB, so GASB 84, which was, it added some changes to your fiduciary fund reporting. So you'll see the audit highlight on the screen there that that our audit work concluded the new standard was properly implemented. So another great result there. We also are including a COVID pandemic emphasis in our report because you did include a COVID no disclosure, just kind of stating that subsequent event that the state of emergency was declared that could have a possible financial impact on the city. We also, on page 14, we also include a statement that this subsequent event is not going to have any impact on our audit opinion. So then on to our next page, another part of your financial statement audit report, this is on page 7. We reference work of other auditors for your Spokane Employees Retirement System. You guys have a separate CPA audit done for that, so we actually go in and review those audit work papers and that audit work since it's included in part of our financial audit. So you'll see there's a few bullets on here, but we go through, like I said, we review their audit performed by Moss Adams. We had no concerns with the work that they performed. We had no limitations or anything with the other audit, and we didn't have there was no instances of material misstatements or anything that came from that audit. So just wanted to point that out for you as well. So then on to our federal grant audit compliance results. These will start, there's a few places throughout the audit report where you'll see these results. It's summarized on page 6, and then it goes into further detail on pages 10 through 12. But so again, we had your federal grant compliance audit for 2019. Again, you'll see the unmodified opinion was issued. So another great result. So we had no issues with the city's compliance for the major programs that we audited. Again, the audit was conducted under government audit standards. And then you'll also see for the internal control compliance, we had no significant deficiencies in internal controls, no material weaknesses, and we found no instances of noncompliance for the audit. So these are the audit, the 2 programs that we looked at for the audit this year. So we had the Community Development Block Grants and then your Continuum of Care program. And those combined gave us 40% coverage of your total federal expenditures. Okay, so we also, part of our audit work included following up on a prior audit management letter. So this was issued for fiscal year 19. And you'll see that, so it was issued for financial reporting preparation or financial statement preparation. So our audit work found that this was mostly resolved from the prior year. So we have a pretty big audit highlight to point out here. So the city only received 1 exit recommendation, which is an excellent audit result for an entity with that of your size and complexity. We really want to give congratulations to Michelle and Sally Stouffer for these. They're our audit liaisons, but we really want to point out this is really an impressive audit result and really great work. So big highlight there for just having the 1 exit item. So our next going to kind of start wrapping up here, but we have a new tool available to our local governments that's available on our website through the client portal. So this is called Tracker, and it gives you access to all your prior audit results, prior audit recommendations that we've issued. So this really gives, it helps with communicating those prior audit issues to your staff or if you've had a turnover in staff. But it also can be really helpful in preparing for the next audit to kind of go back and review those items that we had. Tracker also allows you to respond if any findings are issued. It does give you a chance to add your response in there and what anything that's been done to make progress in resolving those issues. And that's also visible. The finding responses are visible to the public, so it kind of gives you that opportunity to communicate those, any progress that you've had with those findings. Alicia, anything to add for the Tracker?
Just one other comment with management letters. You're allowed to also provide a response and resolution to management letters as well. Those are not published. Since management letters are just referenced in our report and not published on our website, the responses to any resolution or corrective action would also not be published for the public to see. So,
Okay, so our closing remarks. So our audit costs, which we outlined in our entrance conference, are going to be in alignment with our original estimate, so no issues or budgeted hours needed to be added. Your next audit is actually already being conducted, so we have your accountability for public resources audit happening right now, which we plan to be wrapping up in January. And then, so our report publication, so after we finish our exit, we'll be able to go and publish your report for you. It usually takes about a week to get through to publish. We've also added a link here if anyone's interested in signing up for getting those notifications when we do publish reports. The audit survey, we send this out every year to people we've worked with on the audit and to all council members, so you should see that showing up in an email. We love to hear any feedback that you can provide us on the audit. And then our last piece, we just have a big thank you. So we really want to thank Michelle and Sally and also all the city staff that we worked with this year. Everyone really made an effort to work with us to provide the documents electronically since we weren't able to be on site. So we really want to say thank you for that. We were able to complete the audit really successfully remotely with everyone's participation and efforts in that. So really appreciate that. And again, just really want to say great audit results. It's really, really an impressive audit result. So great job to the city. And then the next slide is just any questions that you might have for us.
Any questions? Again, go ahead and volunteer if you have any. I had one question, and that is, since you've accomplished this remotely, do you think that will be a more frequent occurrence, even when we're past pandemic limitations, in terms of auditors being able to stay in their own homes and not commute as much?
well, the state auditor's office will actually be working from home through the end of June. Tara, do you mind muting? Sorry. We'll actually be working from our homes until the end of June and then working occasionally from the office site or even a client site. The anticipation is we're going to try and work more remotely, even if it's just from our office, to try and save on travel costs and some of that in-person time. But some of that time in person is important too, especially if there's a large amount of records that need to be reviewed. And I know there were a couple of times that we did have to come on site at the City Hall, but luckily we have an office down there. But at this point, we're definitely going to be continuing to work remotely through the end of June.
All right, great. Thanks for your work. And again, congratulations, Michelle and Sally and the whole finance team. Those are terrific results. Next, Tanya Wallace, we have you down to talk about the proceeds from the sale of the Normandy complex.
Hi, thank you, City Council members. This is an SBO that really puts the budget in place so that we can transfer those proceeds for those 3 different areas, as mentioned on the briefing sheet. So this just really facilitates putting those dollars where they are intended to be spent according to the strategic plan. The North Bank work has already happened, so this will help us and allow us to finish paying for that work. The other 2 areas for the loop is in progress, and then for SEPTED is being programmed and will come to you at a future date. But this puts the budget and the dollars where they need to be.
I think the question I heard from most people is we weren't familiar with the SEPTED and maybe not sure that we've all agreed on that before. So I'm wondering if you have any history on that or documentation on that.
As you know, I have very little history, but I can get out the documentation for you and send this. Now, let me emphasize, though, council members, this only puts the budget in place. No spending will actually happen until you're comfortable with this. But I will get that documentation for you and forward that to the council.
Okay. Councilmember Mumm.
Hi there. Yeah, Tanya, usually crime prevention through environmental design doesn't go to arterial streets, and I'm just curious about that budget allocation.
Councilmember Mumm, I was curious as well, and I think the reason why it was going into that fund is, at least what I was told by accounting staff, is that it was really for the right-of-ways and some of those areas, and that arterial streets takes care of that.
Yeah, rights of way and SEPTED, I don't know. Councilmember Stratton, I've never heard of crime prevention by design being done in a right of way. Have you?
I have not.
So yeah, let's dig in on that.
Okay. As an alternative, City Council, if you'd like to strike that one SEPTED until you got more information, that is perfectly fine. The dollars will stay right where they're at.
Right.
So it's whatever your comfort level is.
And I've always seen this council be very supportive of crime prevention through environmental design. It's just a matter of where it's supposed to go.
And Tanya, could you tell us, I mean, I think it's in the documents, but for people who are watching, where it will stay while it's being thought about, that third prong?
It is in asset management fund right now.
Okay. All right. Okay. Great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. We have a brief discussion from Mary Muramatsu from City Legal and Police on incorporating RCW 3840-120 on people essentially marching in a military fashion without military credentials.
Yes, thank you, City Council and Council President. This is in response to the resolution 2020-0080, the request that the city attorney and city prosecutor prepare for prompt consideration by the council language that brings the state law into the municipal code and just makes it available, as we've done before with assault fourth degree and a number of other state laws. So this does that, and it does it with language that is very bare bones, as we've done with all other state laws, recognizing that theoretically any state law could later be amended. This adopts as enacted and hereafter amended. So if it should get amended at some point in time, the municipal code stays current with that and states the penalty. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from any council members? All right. I'm not seeing any. Thanks for getting right on that. I just had some
Absolutely. Thank you.
emails from community members wondering where we were at, and we were able to say, oh, we're talking about it today. So that's great. All right. We're down to council requests, and we continue to talk about electric vehicles in the police department. But Tanya, I think, are we doing this next Monday instead? Is that?
Whatever your pleasure is, Council President. I think we had talked about presenting something very briefly today. If we can proceed with that and then have soak time.
It's up to you. So I wasn't sure if you wanted to do it all at once or if you had enough information, but whatever works best for your team.
If it's fine with the council, if we could we have a very, very brief presentation. Sorry, I'm hearing echo. We'd like to present what we have. There is a lot more information that was requested, but we do not have all of that information for you today, but it is very narrowly focused on at least the 4 vehicles, just so that staff knows what to do for 2020. Is that a go for the council?
We have.
I'd like to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, we have plenty of time. So yeah, it's whatever works best for you. So go ahead and make the shorter presentation, sounds like.
Okay. Nathan, can you please share your screen?
You should be good to go. Can you see the screen now?
We can.
Yes, let's just go ahead and advance. What we do have, Council, is very focused on the 4 vehicles and some purchasing options for you to consider. The very last point is really what I want to emphasize for you, even though you're going to see some information, and Nathan has been working, the whole team has been working really hard to deliver to you the latest information on these vehicles. We are taking electrification of our entire fleet very, very seriously. And so we do have some next steps, particularly to the Spokane police fleet. So please hear us out on this presentation and know that a lot more information is going to be coming your way on this.
Great. So I'd like to make this as brief as possible. Essentially, we have some immediate purchasing options here, 5 really, and you can see at the top what the options are, and we're analyzing the acquisition and upfit cost of these vehicles and ultimately looking at the life cycle cost difference. So you could do the 2 Ford K8 hybrids or 2 Tahoes, but as we'll dive in deeper, there are some options that are going to be cheaper. The 4K hybrids, as you can see, would cost about $45,000 less than the two hybrids and the 2 Tahoes. And when it comes to electric vehicles, you could either purchase one Tesla Model 3 or Model Y and save about $2,000 more compared to the 4K8 hybrid SUVs. Or you could go all in and purchase 4 Tesla Model 3s or 4 Tesla Model Ys. The Model Y is essentially just an SUV version of the Model 3 sedan. And those are going to save you $8,000 more compared to the Ford K8 hybrids, or about $5,000 more compared to the 4 K8 hybrids over the life cycle of these vehicles. And as you see, that's assuming the Tesla will have comparable utilization to the Ford K8 hybrids. And once again, these life cycle costs of the electric vehicles do not include the cost of the charging stations for the vehicles. When looking at what other
Nathan, can you?
Police departments.
Nathan, I'm sorry. Can you go back to that slide just for a moment?
Yeah, of course.
What's the A and U cost difference? What's that?
So that's the acquisition and upfit cost difference.
Okay.
In comparison to the first column.
Okay.
To the life cycle.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, and then life cycle cost, and then you'll see the life cycle cost difference below that. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, go ahead.
Before you move on, could you give me a guesstimation of life cycle how many miles is a life cycle on the average? What are we talking about there?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So for this analysis, we assumed an average mileage per year of 25,000 miles per year, and that's with us keeping the vehicles for 5 years. So 125,000 miles is the anticipated life cycle cost.
Do you have any sense of whether the Teslas last longer with less maintenance, or what's the sense of that, since they seem to have less maintenance in general? Just wondering.
Yeah, and that's a great point. All electric vehicles are going to last a lot longer than your traditional gasoline or even hybrid vehicles. On the most extreme ends, we've seen Teslas last over 300,000 miles without any significant maintenance challenges. And further on down the pipeline, Tesla as a company is hoping to develop batteries that can last over 500,000 miles. So the powertrain of these vehicles is what lasts a very long time. Without diving too far into the discussion, the main cost of these vehicles comes from repair to body damage.
Okay. But if that's the case, it seems like, because I know on our K8s, we do want to change them out at 125,000, and we need to do that. But if Teslas are going to go longer than that, is that factored into your numbers? Doesn't seem like it is.
Right. So that is the extended life cycle of the Teslas is not factored into this model. We wanted to keep it the same as far as what they're going to cost at 125,000 miles or 5 years of use. We can do an extended life cycle cost analysis of the electric vehicles if you so wish.
I guess what I'm thinking is, if the Tesla can last 10 years and the K8 means we have to buy another K8 at the end of 5 years, it seems like that could drastically change these numbers. And you don't have to do it at this moment, but would you agree with me generally that would be a pretty substantial change?
Yeah, I would say that I can definitely understand where you're coming from. If the life cycle of the vehicles is going to be different, then that should be factored in, definitely.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. So diving into what other police departments here in Washington State are doing, the city of Seattle, they use 55 Ford Fusion Energies for detective work. They don't have any electric vehicles used for patrol purposes. They have Nissan Leafs for parking enforcement operations. They have some old plug-in hybrid Fords used for administrative needs. But their fleet director did note that for patrol uses, they are transitioning to the Ford hybrid K8, as well as the city of Tacoma. They recently purchased 59 new hybrid patrol K8 vehicles, and they're going to transition their entire patrol fleet to these K8 hybrids over the next 7 years. One thing about these hybrid vehicles is that using them now gives the market time to catch up to patrol-specific uses for electric vehicles. But looking at what we've heard from other police departments across the nation that are using electric vehicles, the city of Fremont in California has a Tesla Model S that they use for patrol purposes, and they are ordering one Model Y to extend their pilot study. In the pilot study, the biggest negative that they saw of the electric vehicle has to do with the transition time between shifts and charging that vehicle. I will note that the Model S has a significantly less amount of range compared to the long-range Model 3 that we are looking at, or even the Model Y. The city of Hyattsville in Maryland uses a Chevrolet Bolt for one patrol vehicle, but this patrol vehicle is essentially a slightly larger sedan, very small SUV. It is not used to transport arrestees, and it is only used by one officer who also has significant admin duties. in an office. They also have 2 all-electric police motorcycles that they do enjoy thoroughly. When it comes to charging these vehicles, our police department averages about 55 miles per day, and the patrol vehicles that are hot seated or essentially ran 24/7, that's what they're averaging per day. If you're looking at the long range Tesla Model 3, which is the main one in question, during cold weather months, which is any temperature below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to have about 250 miles of range, or roughly 4 to 5 days on a full charge. But you don't want to use the full charge, especially during the colder months. You want to at least always keep an electric vehicle at 20% charge. And also cold weather has a significant impact on the charging time for electric vehicles, and increasing their length of time needed on the charger. You also should be storing them in covered parking, or ideally in a heated parking environment. The warm weather range, as you can see, is 350 miles, and the charge from 0 to 100% would take about 11 hours on a level 2 charger. So as far as range goes, these vehicles would be able to meet the range of what the patrol vehicles are averaging right now, running 24/7. So when it comes to the analysis that I did, I kind of have 2 recommendations for you guys. If the choice is either to purchase 4 electric vehicles or 4 hybrid gasoline-powered cars today, I would purchase the 4 hybrid gasoline-powered cars. But if there's some leeway, I would purchase and pilot 1 electric vehicle, being the Tesla Model Y preferably, or the Model 3, and then purchase 3 hybrid K8 SUVs. The electric assessment of public vehicles in Washington was released in November by Atlas Public Policy, and their EV alternative recommendation for the K8 vehicles that we're using now would be the Tesla Model Y, which only costs a few $1,000s more than the Model 3 and would suit the patrol use significantly better than the Model 3 sedan. My second recommendation, if you guys do not want to just pilot 1 EV, I would recommend purchasing 4 hybrid SUVs. Essentially, don't purchase 4 EVs for the police department right now. Instead, I would implement EVs in other departments in 2021 where applicable, and allow the police department to get the infrastructure set up, as well as set up all the logistics for charging and using these electric vehicles. Before we dive into next steps, do you guys, or do any council members have any questions for me about electric vehicles specifically, or electric vehicles in police use?
This is Karen. I just have a quick question. When you talk about that they need to be stored, do we have any covered parking for police vehicles?
I think I don't know the answer to that. I think that'd be directed towards the police chief.
There we go. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So as far as covered parking, no. So when you look at investigations over the Gardner building, there's no covered parking over there. For a few administrative, there is in the basement, something like 4 spots in the basement. All of it's going to be outside, though, except for those who have take-home cars. The vast majority will park those inside.
And one quick question.
Chief, do we have parking in the STA basement? Is that in the new?
For the downtown officers, they did agree to let us use 9 parking spots in the for the downtown officers.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thanks.
And one quick note that I would like to make on parking these vehicles, when it comes to officer safety and the safety of these vehicles, I would make sure that we have space where these vehicles can be behind a locked gate. Currently, all of the electric vehicle chargers that we have don't have the ability to be behind a locked gate behind either City Hall or at the Nelson Service Center. I think that would be a priority when using these vehicles for police use.
Council President, so I'm a little out of left field. It's not our discussion around that we do not have the infrastructure or the technology to maintain these vehicles. Were we going to have to get to speak on that, or was that an outsourced question?
So the city currently has, we have 6 charging ports at the Nelson Service Center, as well as the charging station behind City Hall. But anything that is city-owned, that's all that we have that is municipally owned. Other than that, the vehicles would need to be charged at a public charging location. When it comes to other infrastructure that we would need essentially either we'd have to outsource all of the service to the Tesla service facility that is located near the Nelson Service Center, or ideally we would have our technicians trained in-house to service the vehicles, but none of our technicians that I know of are trained to service any sort of electric vehicle, let alone plug-in hybrids at the bare minimum.
And what's your familiarity, Nathan, with Avista's offer to help pay for charging infrastructure for the city?
So I think Avista would be a great partner for this. Last time I spoke with them, it seemed that they were focused on their DC fast charging implementation plan for DC fast chargers specifically. Obviously, they did do the study for in-home chargers. I don't know if we would want these vehicles to be charged at officers' homes instead. But I have no indication that they would be willing to help pay for any of the infrastructure needed unless that infrastructure was also able to be used by the general public.
And what Nathan, I had put one question to you, but it wasn't that many days ago, so you might not be ready with it. But I was trying to figure out, since we're only talking about 4 vehicles at this point, what the drop-off in use of patrol vehicles is from the most used shift to the least used shift, which is late in the night and early in the morning. I don't know if you've gotten those numbers yet.
No, I haven't gotten those numbers yet to you, but it seems like we might have another presentation coming up a week from now. I have that information to you then.
Okay. All right. We can wait till then. Thanks.
Okay.
So City Council, I know the police chief is there if you have any questions for him as well, but I did want to really emphasize Nathan is doing a great job. And I think we've had a lot of really good conversations with the police department as well. Here's some next steps. We have received a great number of questions around the police fleet, and we are committed to really creating a plan. And out of all these questions regarding, infrastructure and even for should they be charged at home, et cetera, a lot of that really does ultimately require that the city put together a plan that we can act upon. And so that is our commitment to you, City Council, as well as to the citizens, is to create that plan. And it is going to take some time. It is going to take a fleet director being in that position permanently, as well as an assistant fleet director. It's going to take a whole group of folks to really put a plan together, and also to have you provide the guidance along the way. This is a heavy workload, at least 9 months. In a lot of places, it's reasonably a year-long process, but it also requires that we have touch points with you along the way to make sure that we're on the right path and then going in the right direction. I think we all understand that electrification of the fleet is the direction we're going, and we just need to roll up our sleeves and get that plan developed. So with that, if there are any questions with the police chief, I know that he's on here as well.
So, Tanya, this is Karen. Yes. So I want to make sure that I've wrapped my brain around this correctly. So it sounds to me that this could be premature for us right now until we get appropriate infrastructure set up for parking and charging, and then also to look at service issues, people to service these vehicles. We would be smarter maybe to wait for that to start coming on, to plan for that, rather than doing this now without all this in place.
That is an excellent point. I would say for the question in front of you on the 4 purchases for 2020, we are not quite ready. But for 2021, with the Model Y coming out, we could definitely get ready. We do need to put a plan together of how do we make this operational. How do we even take one and make it operational and let the officers test it out and find it? I mean, that would be a great lead in. But we also have to get busy with our infrastructure and plan that out.
Okay.
Nathan has told you exactly the infrastructure we have today. It's usable. It's not ideal. And if the officers were to charge these at home, that's a negotiation process that we have to go through.
Right.
So again, back to we need a plan, and we need to get busy working on that plan so that we can electrify the fleet in the future.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So I wasn't too far off.
No, and just for, we did also send the 1-pager for the K8 hybrids. We've ordered those, but even the hybrids are not yet operational. They're not in service yet. So we don't even have yet how successful are the hybrids in performing for us. We're not quite there yet.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Mumm.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited that we're trying some new things, and it does make sense to maybe do one. I'm open to that and move forward. I think it would be great if our officers could try one of these out. I think the term Tesla sounds kind of fancy, but when you look at the life cycle is possibly twice as long, the maintenance is much less, and the potential safety for our officers, this makes a lot of sense to test this out. And I hope when we do the analysis that we don't just look at the cost, we do add in the life cycle and we do add in the safety as a criteria. Because I think, actually, Tanya, you might have told me, or maybe officers as well, they have to reinforce some of these vehicles with special equipment to modify it for safety. So we have to look at the expenses of that too, not just one certain model, but all of them have to be retrofitted.
Councilmember Wilkerson.
So I support us trying something as long as the test is in the field and not just someone who's in the administrative part of the police department. Because that way I don't feel we will really get a good understanding of how that will really work for the city.
Thanks. Yeah. Mr. Payne, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. There's a couple of things that I want to point out, and the police chief may be going to speak to some of this as well. The examples of the patrol vehicles that Nathan has brought forward to you, those are one-shift vehicles. Those are not hot seat vehicles, which is the primary need for the police department at this point. So I would like to be cautious and remember that. I would also share that in 2021, we are already aware of at least 4, if not 5 or 6 vehicles that are going to be coming to fleet for replacement within the other departments that will fit the total cost of a net ownership module as being replaced by electric vehicles. So we're going to be working with those departments to build the infrastructure for them, whether they're parked here or whether they're parked at their departments. I got an email from, and Nathan alluded to it in his slide where he spoke about the city of Seattle. Their Green Fleet Manager team sent me an email today explaining the list of vehicles that they have electrified, and they started with the parking enforcement, which is basically their parking meter people, and then they transitioned to those Ford Fusion Energies, which are plug-in hybrids. But if you had the email in front of you, in the paragraph below that list, you would see they feel that there's not a vehicle on the market, which is, unfortunately, I guess the position I would take, that's ready to be used as a patrol vehicle in itself. So if the goal is to get electric vehicles into our fleet, I think the money's better spent in the vehicles that are coming in 2021 within the other departments. And I'm going to throw the water department under the bus. They're meter reading cars. Waste Energy's got to replace a couple of old Sonomas. Those are primary candidates. Engineering department is looking for some F-150s. We can start looking at the electrification of those. So from my perspective and the research that Nathan's done and brought forward, I don't know that the PD is the place to pilot the electric car. It doesn't pencil out unless it's a true patrol car, hot seat car. It doesn't meet the total cost of analysis. Those are the only ones right now that do. As the market emerges and the total cost of an electric vehicle goes down, then it's going to be better. We'd be better able to pencil in and justify financially the cost of that electric vehicle. I firmly believe and commit that it will pencil out for the water department. It will pencil out for waste energy, and it may pencil out for the other departments as well. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. And I guess I just want to make the point because 18 months ago, we were here and we were told that we didn't have technicians that could do it. We didn't have charging infrastructure. We needed time to do it. And so here we are. We still haven't done it in the rest of the fleet. These Teslas, by all indications, are faster and safer. They last longer. They're cheaper. And I would just say that we're just talking about 4 vehicles. Not all our patrol vehicles are 3-shift vehicles, so they could take one out of the 3 shifts out. They can be parked in the STA basement garage, which is secure. It could do all those things. The one piece of data that would really make this clear is if we had the information about how many cars are sitting around during graveyard shift because they could be being charged. And again, we're only talking 4. And what I've really been wanting to hear is how we can do it, not all the reasons why we can't. We are going to have to build chargers. We know the whole fleet is going to be electrified. So it's just a matter of time. And Avista has offered to pay some. We have grants out there. We're going to have technicians. So I feel like every week I'm hearing no. And I really, for just 4, as a great pilot, I agree that we need a whole plan. But a pilot, that's what you do. Now is the time. We have this opportunity. It's going to be substantially cheaper because they last longer if you really do the analysis that way. And there's police departments that use them as patrol. We would just be using 4, and we see how it goes while we're creating the plan. So I would love to see kind of a different approach and figure out how we would do this as opposed to how we would not do it. But we'll get the more report next week. Which has been promised. And, and I think Tanya said she'll have a contract for either set of vehicles so that council can decide. And it's, there's 7 people on council. And so who knows how that vote goes. But I'd like to get all the information and really get the full analysis instead of just kind of being pushed in a direction. But I'll get off my soapbox and we'll go on to the next matter, which is actually, but I'll get off my
end of report.
I'll get off my soapbox and go to the next thing, which is also law enforcement related, but a slightly different aspect. We've circulated for you a resolution that would waive the ride-along requirement for the ombudsman and the OPOC commission members. By law, they need to participate in ride-alongs each year, but COVID makes that inadvisable, and they've checked with the chief, and I believe Chief Meidel has no objection, and the commission has passed a resolution, but to be safe, City Legal has asked us to also pass a resolution that would just formally waive it for this year. Hopefully next year they'll be back on ride-alongs, as will we can all go on ride-alongs eventually. So any questions or comments on that? Not seeing any. Next up is a downtown precinct update. Councilmember Kinnear was the sponsor of this, but I'm assuming she's not the one reporting on it. So I would love to hear who's going to give us an update on how things are going at the downtown precinct.
Council President, I asked Captain Singley, who oversees our downtown precinct, to attend, so just want to make sure he's still on.
Yeah.
Dave, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
I'm just giving an update on how the new facility is working out.
Yeah, we've been operational for several months now. Everything's going great down here. Everybody really enjoys the new facility. We get a lot of positive feedback from people in the area. I guess the primary update would just be on staffing. We anticipate adding the sergeant and the 4 neighborhood resource officers at our markup, which starts on January 10th.
I know one of the questions people keep asking me is foot patrols. How are those going? How many of them? How are they documented when they happen? Where are they taking place? What can you tell us about that?
Well, we still continue to do those. They currently just kind of depend on staff and what we have going on daily. Although every year, starting on Black Friday through the holiday season, we do daily prowl checks and walkthroughs of the River Park Square. So those have continued. Once we have the additional staff on January 10th, we will begin doing daily biker foot patrols, 5 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Awesome. That'll make the DSP very happy and lots of business owners happy. Councilmember Wilkerson.
Could you just speak to the interactions you're having with our homeless people downtown? Has there been improvement, relationship building? Speak to me about that.
Ma'am, I only heard talk about the homeless interactions. I didn't hear the second part of your question.
That was the gist of it, but also about relationship building, improvement, just the whole scope of what the purpose of the downtown police precinct was actually supposed to deliver to the downtown for.
Well, our NROs, they definitely are engaging in relationship building with everybody downtown on a daily basis, but there certainly are a lot of our interactions are with people experiencing homelessness. They continue to interact with them every day, whether it's on calls or on foot patrols or working with our other partners with the city's cleanup crew and Geiger cleanup crew and the DSP ambassadors. So I think overall it's been a very positive relationship.
Any other questions about the downtown precinct? All right. The last thing I have on my agenda, I don't think it's actually happening, but it says COVID-19 update. Jacoby?
Council President, I have some information I could share with the council if you would like, based on your and Council Member Kinnear's request last week.
All right, take it away.
Thank you. So I'm obviously not the expert on this, but I guess initially I just wanted to remind the City Council and staff that there is a regular internal city call briefing by police, fire, emergency management, and others about COVID-related issues at 9 o'clock every Monday and Thursday morning. And it goes for about 20 minutes to provide pertinent information and updates that are received from the hospitals, the health district, and others. So I think that information was sent out previously to the council, but if the mayor's office needs to send it out again, I can certainly arrange to do that, and you're welcome to participate as often as you would like. I'll just give a very brief summary of information that was shared both last Thursday in the call and then again today. A big issue, of course, to the city involves the discussions with the Spokane Regional Health District on the issue of isolation for people that need to either be quarantined in the shelter facilities or who have been diagnosed with COVID. And I understand that the SRHD has been working on this issue and is going to be providing information to the shelter operators later this week about kind of what expectations are going forward. And I think the health district's concern stems around the fact that the FEMA funding that has been paying for the isolation facilities at this point expires at the end of December, at the end of this month. I think everybody believes it will probably be extended given the circumstances that we all face, but it hasn't happened yet. So I think the health district, and rightly so, is hesitant to go ahead and assume that the funding will be extended before it is. So hopefully more information will be shared this week. And of course, the providers are concerned about if they have to provide isolation within the shelters themselves, about how much capacity that takes up for them being able to use the facilities for unaffected homeless individuals that wish to access the shelters. I guess the second area I'd touch on is there are city employees who have been affected. And of course, we have the police and fire, first responders, and Chief Milo reported this morning that the number of officers out because of either quarantine or being diagnosed is down significantly from previous levels. And fires remained a relatively stable amount, and they've got a program where they're managing that. But again, the first responders are oftentimes people that can't control the fact that they get exposed by people with whom they're working. I think as it relates to other city employees, there's also been city employees that have been diagnosed. As far as anyone can tell, most or all of that contact didn't come from other city employees, but came from outside sources, which has led HR and the mayor in particular to remind all of us, particularly those of us that are in City Hall most every day, that we need to be very diligent in following the CDC guidelines. So I don't think I've been involved in an in-person meeting probably for the last 10 days. So most meetings are now done almost exclusively on Zoom or WebEx, and everyone's reminded to follow the social distancing and the mask requirements. So I've noticed not only in City Hall, but just generally in downtown, a higher percentage of people today than, let's say, 3 weeks ago are wearing masks all the time, even when they're outside. So hopefully people are getting the message that that's very important, kind of in conjunction with the fact that employees have been, that some employees have been diagnosed. HR continues to work with insurers to expand the elimination of copays for COVID-related treatment for the first quarter of next year. That's in place now, but assuming that there may be the need for that to be in effect next quarter, HR is working on that. One of the other issues that we hear a lot about is hospital capacity. So Mike Lopez from Fire reported this morning that in our local hospitals, there are currently 138 people admitted in the hospital that have COVID, which is 5 lower than it was on Friday, but it's still at a pretty high level. And ICU, there are 48 individuals in the area hospitals that are in ICU with COVID, which is up 3 from last Friday. The other kind of, I guess, alarming fact that Mike pointed out this morning is that the acute care calls for non-COVID related issues that are typically up in the winter months are up. And so hospitals are kind of facing the difficulty of balancing the COVID related needs in ICU with other ICU needs, and which is one of the reasons that I think at least one of the hospital systems has probably eliminated elective surgeries in the near term just to try to get a handle on making sure that there's adequate ICU capacity. in a nutshell, those are at least some of the items that were discussed on Thursday and today. I'd be happy. I don't know that I can answer questions, but if any council member or staff has questions and you pass them on to me, I can certainly talk to the people that may know and try to get information back to you, or go ahead and send me an email with your questions, and I'll try to follow up on getting information to you. But it's definitely a serious situation. I think we all know that, and I think from what I see, a higher number of people are following the guidelines today than in the past, but certainly not everybody is. So I see that Chief Schaefer's on the phone, and he's probably as much a resident expert on all this as anybody in the city. So if anyone has any questions or comments, one of us would be happy to try to take aim at them.
Thanks, Mike. Anything to add, Chief Schaefer?
No, sir. No, I thought Mike did a great job. We're in the trenches and above the situation from a strategic level, and trying as best as we can to communicate with and partner with the health agency here in town.
Okay. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Councilmember Mumm.
I just want to add in, and maybe HR has done this, but just for our own employees, it might be really important to talk about what the vaccine and expectations are, and our frontline workers, how we would potentially facilitate some of that, and then what about those that are not interested in a vaccine, how we deal with employees. We can take that up at Finance and Administration, but I just wanted to put that out. That's an issue, a small one, but an important one. That would be great. I think we're thinking forward, but, I don't know when we're anticipating receiving vaccines in the Spokane area, but it would be sure great to be prepared.
Yeah, I think Councilwoman, on that issue came up this morning in the call, and so there are some people that are going to follow up on that. It wasn't anticipated that the city, even for our frontline workers, would be in charge of that vaccine would come to the city, but we're trying to get a line on where we can get that information. And so Sarah Nuss and others this morning volunteered to try to track that down. And I think once they get any information, we'll make sure that we get it to HR and ask them to share it, because I think that's an issue that a lot of people have asked about.
Yes, we should know more after Thursday when they're talking about approving it. Also, everything that I've heard so far is that for this particular vaccine, it has to be stored at such a low temperature that it's probably going to be at hospitals, and people are going to go there as opposed to being distributed at a place like City Hall or something like that. But hopefully more information. It looks much brighter than it did even a few weeks ago. So appreciate that. Appreciate the team. And again, those phone calls on Mondays and Thursdays at 9 a.m., they are usually done in about 20 minutes. They're very helpful getting a handle on what's going on. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? All right, not seeing. Just a reminder for those of you who are interested, we do have our study session on Thursday with many of our legislators and other elected leaders from around the county. But it does start at 11 a.m. Originally, it was going to start at 1 p.m., but it does start at 11 a.m., and I'll keep reminding people we have a great agenda from City Council on behalf of the city, and then also we're looking forward to hearing from some of our friends in the Spokane Valley on their agendas, and also from our legislators and knowing what's up in this going to be a very unique session. Our next Public Safety and Health Committee is going to be held on January 4th, 2021. And I'm sure Councilmember Kinnear will be back to host us then. We have briefing at 3:30. Until then, we're adjourned.